How can so-called Native Americans say they know about the Great Spirit when they sold our people out? How do you talk about having some kind of a connection with the Great Spirit when you have made a covenant with the colonizers who destroyed your people? Now I understand like why we receive so much hate, and why they just ignore us when we go to their their events and things like that, but they accept the so-called Europeans. Oh, they can be Native American. Oh, I'm Cherokee. I'm like, wait, what? You're what? But us as so-called black people, you guys had to invent an entirely different group that doesn't even exist. You had to make a black group, a Native American group, an Afro-American group, colored group, whatever else, just to purge us from being the original people. You're willing to accept people like this. You're willing to accept people that look like this as being native because maybe they're 1/16th, have 1/16th native blood, right? From your quantum blood, whatever, test that you guys talk about. But you don't even tell people that you waited 75 years for our people to die off, for you to kick us off the rolls or whatever else, and then keep telling us that color doesn't matter, when that's exactly what you did. One drop rule excludes us from being native. But these other people, so-called white people, can be 1/16th native blood and they're in. They get all the perks. You guys worked this entire system out in order to exclude us as a people from, the benefits that we were supposed to have after we were the ones that suffered slavery, and you went ahead and helped everyone else except us, and you guys went along with that. So explain to me exactly how you have the Great Spirit, how you know the Great Spirit when you've been in cahoots and in league with the enemy of the Most High this whole time. Oh, this person for sure could never be a native because he probably has at least a little bit of Negro blood in him. Look at all that melanin in his skin. Yeah, for sure he's not black group. Oh, this person here, oh, for sure he's got a drop of Negro blood, brown skin, nice melanin right there, black group. Oh, look at this beautiful sister right here. Oh yeah, for sure she's got too much melanin, black group. She's not native. Even though there's statues that have been here way before, these Europeans got here that depict us right here in the Olmecs. But this person would have been considered, not native, and he would have been put in the black group too because he probably had lips too big, nose too broad, black group. Now you know why they got rid of the first editions of these books, because right here it talks about, right there, it shows you these statues that were here in the Americas. It says number 6, without Atlantis, how can you explain the fact that the early Egyptians were depicted by themselves as red men on their own monuments? And on the other hand, how can you account for the representations of Negroes on the monuments of Central America? Well, they can't be so-called Negroes. They got to be just black people. It says Desiree Charnay, now engaged in exploring those monuments, has published in the North American Review for December 1880 photographs of a number of idols exhumed at San Juan de Teotihuacan, from which I select the following strikingly Negroid faces. So you natives knew about all this stuff. You were aware of all this stuff, but you made a covenant with the other nations. So you said, nah, man, they're not our people. Black group, we're going to make sure we get all, of the perks and all of the restitution that they were supposed to get. We're going to keep that for ourselves and give it all back to the Europeans. This is a depiction of the Mexicans, the true Mexicans, so you call Mexico or whatever else, from 1671, right? So pretty much everyone knew about the so-called Negro-looking people actually being the original inhabitants here. But you made a covenant to go along with the other nations and accept someone that looks like this. You accept him, or people that look like this, and they could be 1/16th, and you'd accept them. Let me show you guys a quick video that breaks all this down.
Quantum, or as I like to refer to it, the white man's measuring cup. Now, this is a double-edged sword. While I understand that some indigenous nations use it so as not to be bred out of existence, I also understand that this was a policy not of addition, but one of subtraction. Yeah. One that gave the white man the final say-so as to who would and wouldn't be recognized as Native American. The United States has a long history of breaking treaties with indigenous people, and by using blood quantum, or the percentage of indigenous blood within a person, to determine who was of a certain tribe, literally gave the government the ability to erase indigenous people simply with a stroke of a pen. They used this policy to their advantage. You see, tribes were allotted a certain amount of land, and members of that tribe within that land were allotted certain parcels. Now, by eliminating people off the rolls, what they did was create a surplus of land. This, in turn, was sold to corporations and those not of indigenous blood. This policy was used to reduce Native American lands from 148 million acres in 1887 to just 48 million acres by 1934. Does no one else find it ironic that at the same time they were using this policy to determine who was or wasn't of an indigenous tribe,
Right here.
they were using the one-drop rule to determine who was or wasn't African American?
Right there.
You had to have this much blood to determine whether or not you were worthy of the scraps that fell off the white man's table, or this much blood to determine whether or not you were black and therefore suffered the consequences. Both measured by the white man's measuring cup. I said all that to say this: subjugation is no longer instituted and enforced by whips and chains, but by the mark of a pen or the bang of a gavel.
So you see, how can you have the Spirit? How can you have the Great Spirit? How can you have the Holy Spirit when you have been a tool of the colonizers? You think because you have a card, you think because the government has recognized you as being the native, that all of a sudden that makes it true? These people have lied about absolutely everything. And you've now gone along with it. And now you're going to suffer the repercussions. And those repercussions are not going to be anything nice at all. So you got, and it's like, you can't keep putting everybody into all these groups. I know there's no such thing as a Native American. There's no such thing as a Mexican. There's no such thing as an African American, okay? It's sheep and goats. That's all that there is. Two groups. That's it. All these proverbs are just nothing but distractions. If you're working with the Most High, if you are clinging to the Israelites, the Most High is dealing with you. The Most High has awakened you at this time. The Most High is dealing with you. If he's not, and you've been getting all these perks, and you seem to think that the fact that we're getting, the Most High is giving us this information, that's wrong, and all of a sudden we're racist because we're bringing out your lies, so that just shows you the spirit that is on you. Obadiah is not just for the so-called white man. It's also for people who have gone in league with the other nations as well. Let's look at Obadiah 1. For thy violence against thy brother Jacob, a shame shall cover thee, and thou shalt be cut off forever. Okay, all these people who've gone in league and made covenants with these colonizers, these Europeans, this stuff is going to happen to you too. In the day that thou stoodest on the other side, in the day that the strangers carried away captive his forces, and foreigners entered into his gates, and cast lots upon Jerusalem, even thou wast as one of them. You natives, you were just as one of them. You went along with this garbage. You went like they were casting lots for our lands, and you went along. That's what the guy just said. You had 150 million acres. You got left about 50. 100 million acres went back to him. You got to keep 50 million. He took 100 million that was meant for us. Okay, so again, and foreigners entered into his gates and cast lots upon Jerusalem. Even thou wast as one of them. But thou shouldest not have looked on the day of thy brother, and the day that he became a stranger. Neither shouldest thou have rejoiced over the children of Judah, and the day of their destruction. Neither shouldest thou have spoken proudly in the day of distress. You've been speaking loudly, talking about how we're not the people because you got a card, because you got government approved. Thou shouldest not have entered into the gate of my people, in the day of their calamity. Yea, thou shouldest not have looked on their affliction in the day of their calamity, nor have laid hands on their substance in the day of their calamity. Neither shouldest thou have stood in the crossway to cut off those that did escape. Neither shouldest thou have delivered up those of his that did remain in the day of distress. For the day of the Lord is near upon all the heathen. As thou hast done, it shall be done unto thee. Thy reward shall return upon thine own head. This is why all this information is coming out. Some people may have made covenants. Some people might be unaware. You're getting an opportunity to see this truth and make a choice. It's coming out quickly. And like I said, there's going to be hell to pay for people who've made covenants with these other nations, these colonizers. And now the Most High is bringing out this truth. Shalom.